know it's 6 o'clock, but I see a few people trickling in, so I'm just going to give another minute for people to come in and get seated. Go ahead and get started. My name is Jacqueline Martin, and I'm the superintendent at Keystone Central. The purpose of tonight's meeting looks like there's a few more people coming. Thanks. The purpose of tonight's meeting is really informational for parents and families who are here tonight. We invited all the families in our school district, elementary and middle school, to be present. Some of you may also be high school parents as well. But the purpose of this, again, is truly informational. I know that there's a lot of rumors out there. There's a lot of questions that parents and families have. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to really try to provide you with the up-to-date information that we currently have, hopefully answer a lot of the questions that are already in your head, and provide you with an avenue to give us some feedback and to ask additional questions. So because this is an informational meeting, there's not a public comment section of tonight's meeting. There is a public comment opportunity at Thursday night's meeting. It is a special meeting at 6:30, high school auditorium, and there is a public comment section at that meeting.
Jackie, high school cafeteria.
High school cafeteria. I have made that mistake before. High school cafeteria. I think there's something else going on in the auditorium that evening, so we're switched to the cafeteria. At that meeting, I'll be presenting not only the information that you're seeing tonight, but also the information that was presented to our school board about a year and a half ago by interim superintendent Dr. Lanakanis. So the previous information will be reviewed. We have new board members and new superintendents since then. Review the old information. I provided some updated data to that slideshow. And then again, we'll be using the exact same slides from tonight at that meeting. Again, there will be public comment time at that meeting as well. So what has led us to look at a potential reorganization is what I want to share with you up front, and then also the next steps. If we were to do a reorganization, what would that look like? And so what's really led us to get to this point is the fact that the district did a comprehensive plan in the spring and through the summer. We approved it, I believe, in October and November. And that comprehensive plan is really an academic plan for following PDE regs, and also what is the mission and vision of the school district? Where are we headed academically, emotionally, socially with our students? What do we want from our students and our graduates? That 3-year plan is in place. And then what we also need to do is some planning, because we need to look at our facilities. The district has not invested a lot of money into facilities. It's expensive, it hasn't been done. There's been very little done to maintain our facilities, which then if you don't maintain something, in the end, it costs more. So in order to avoid major renovations, major reconstructions, and unexpected costs, what we want to do is we want to look at a 10-year facility plan. And then also we want to work towards a 10-year technology plan, because the comprehensive plan, the facility plan, and the tech plan also will help us inform a 10-year budget projection. It's not a secret that the district's finances have gone like this over the last decade. Our goal is to straighten that out, not make it so bouncy and up and down and extreme, but to kind of know what we're expecting and plan for the future. And so if we're serious about the comp plan, And we're serious about the facility plan, and we're being responsible, and we're serious about keeping technology up to speed in a 21st century school, then we need to make sure that we're putting our human and physical resources to those plans. And so that really is the overall purpose of having these plans completed. So in order for the facility committee, and I would also say that the board is committed to completing a 10-year facility plan by May of 2020. So in an effort to work towards that goal, the board reached out to Crabtree Rohrbaugh to ask them for some additional information in order to inform that master facility plan. The entire presentation from Crabtree Rohrbaugh is on the main page of the district website, as well as this presentation that I'm doing tonight, you can get on the main page, www.kcsd.us. Both reports are right there, easy to access. We did not print the entire report for the public because there are a lot of maps in there of school buildings, how they're being used, and based on safety concerns, we didn't publish the entire report. But if there is information that you wish to have or you questions, you may ask me, the facility folks, business manager, administrators, and we will get you the information that we can. So this is a summary of the Crabtree report. There were 3 main areas that they studied. 1 was enrollment analysis, 2 was building assessment, and 3 were options for the board to consider. This slide is directly from Crabtree's report. This is not my slide. It's their slide. And basically what you're looking at is in the enrollment projections in the graph on the left. That chart shows you a 10-year decline in enrollment from 2010 to 2019. And what you'll see is that's for all of IU10. IU10 encompasses all of Clinton County, all of Center County, and all of Clearfield County. So you can see that a declining enrollment is not just unique to Keystone Central. It's a trend across our entire region. If you look at the graphic on the right, the star in the middle with the green line represents where we are now with enrollment. The graphic shows you where we were 5 years prior with the star that's up at the top and where the enrollment projection is to go in the next 5 years.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
With that projection that you had there in the graph, does that include all schools?
All
like
schools in Keystone.
Private schools, charter schools?
The IU10 graph on the left includes all the schools in IU10, which would include charter schools but not include private schools.
Okay.
Great question. So this graph represents, when you see these trend lines, this represents a mathematical model. There were 3 different sources that informed Crabtree's team on the enrollment projections. And you see the gray line at the top, the gold colored line, and maybe like the royal blue line. Those represent 3 different mathematical models. And the navy blue line, second from the top, really is the average of what those calculations were. But in either case, you can see that there's a steady decline. We know that this isn't going to go to 0. At some point, this has to level off. But again, it's a mathematical model. And it also assumes that there's no changes to anything in the county. So those are some things that just to keep in mind. It's a projection, it's a point in time, and it's important to understand where those numbers came from. Additionally, basically what this is saying is that the elementary attendance areas, when they looked at individual schools instead of just the whole region and the whole district, what does that look like? And we do know that enrollment is not declining as rapidly at Renova Elementary as it is in the elementaries in the southern tier. And I'm going to ask Mr. Priscilla, our Director of Facilities, to explain the next 3 slides, and again, it's just a summary.
Good evening. The next couple of slides we have here go over the facilities condition index that we looked at getting for all of our buildings within the district. What the facilities condition index does is it takes a look at everything kind of universally across the district. It looks at the site accessibility, exterior building envelope, some interior elements, accessibility, interior, safety and security, plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. What the FCI does is it indexes everything, and it indexes it universally across all of our buildings. So the same firm did the same study at every building. So all of our buildings score equal or the same, or are looked at the same across the entire district, which kind of gives us somewhat of a picture of what we're expecting. The way the scoring came out on this is obviously Dickey was our worst, Liberty Curtin, Robb Elementary, Mill Hall, and then Woodward. And we kind of knew some of this data, but they kind of put this in a perspective and scored it. I think a lot of the teachers, a lot of some of the public and all that would probably agree with that, knowing if they've been in some of our buildings. This particular scoring system is also used throughout the Commonwealth. All of our state agencies are using an FCI, and it really helps them with planning going into the future. One of the things that I see when I look at this automatically is the lower the score being 40, the worse your building is getting. And you can kind of see that on the graph at the bottom. We know from them looking at the building, looking at all the accessibility issues and all the stuff that they went over on the previous slide, that at Dickey Elementary, we're going to spend about, at the low side, about $8 million, and at the high side, about $10 million. That doesn't mean we're going to spend that money today. It means we need to spend that money over the next 10 years to bring this school up to today's standards.
I think what Rob said is really an important component to know, that the $8 million doesn't have to be spent immediately. Like, that's not an upfront cost. And that number, actually the numbers, oh, that's my pointer. If you look at all of these numbers combined here in the low section, the low estimate, that's the lowest. This is the highest estimate. But even if we look at the low, the least amount of money to bring these buildings up to code does not take these buildings to state-of-the-art 21st century schools. It fixes the schools we have. And so one of the things that I want everybody to understand is that the facilities committee, when they're looking at a 10-year plan, they have to figure out, if we have to maintain these buildings over the next 10 years and we don't want to neglect them for 30 years and end up with a huge problem, we need to plan effectively. So that means that we have to figure out, I think this is roughly $20 to $25 million, somewhere in there. That's a lot of money to spend over the next 10 years, and that only addresses the needs at our elementary schools. So it's not just Dickey we're talking about all of our buildings.
Yeah, to go a little further with that, as the Crabtree report is due to be completed in, I think it's March or April, and they'll have the high school and the middle school on there, and also the schools in the northern tier, both Bucktail and Renova. Bucktail High School and Renova Elementary. So, these numbers are just some of the numbers that we're dealing with that we've gotten so far. The process is a long, drawn-out thing. It doesn't happen overnight. They're in the buildings, they study them, they take the data back, and work on the reports. The numbers that we saw in this report are similar to the report numbers that we had seen in the previous study that was done prior to myself coming here, and they're a little bit different, but they're not extremely different. One of the things that we also, as the facilities committee, we had asked Crabtree to come up with a few different options. These aren't options that we're going to actually go with, but we needed some options to start with that would be talking points. So I don't need to read all the way down through them, but we sequentially went down through and looked at each of those and looked at pros and cons of those at the facility committee level. And we also, that led us to developing some of the other options, because every one of these options, there's cost to. We're going to have to build something or change something or do it. One of the things that I brought back was that our facilities, we have space in them. We just have to utilize it properly so that we're not spending money that we don't need to. And that's that's where we got to with some of this. The next, I think it's the next slide will start to bring it in. Yeah.
So if we go back to this slide and you look at, again, the Dickey Elementary FCI score, that does take into account the immediate problem, which is the transformer. Okay, so the transformer has to be fixed. It's not an option. We've been putting PPNL off. It's an old transformer. It's 30 years old. It has a Pritchard switch, which I don't know really what that is, other than it looks like the Frankenstein switch. But basically, it has to be changed out. PPNL wanted it changed out last summer. They wanted it changed out at Christmas. It's a reliability issue, which means that because of the age of the transformer, it has a higher chance of failure, which it did fail. We had that problem in May. I think we lost power there in May. So based on that being an urgent issue, we've been working on a contingency plan. Like, let's say that the power goes out at Dickey tomorrow. What is our contingency plan? Because what's going to happen is it's going to, we can't hook a generator in there. We've looked at, I asked Rob, like, what if we get a generator? Can we plug a generator in there? Well, the problem is the switchgear is what's not going to allow us to hook in alternate power. So therefore, we're not going to be able to have school in that building. It's a 6 to 8 week repair window. 6 to 8 week repair window. So we can't not have school for 6 to 8 weeks. So therefore, what is the contingency plan? So our contingency plan is we started looking at where would we put students in an emergency situation if we had to. That goes to where do we have space to put those children? The only space that we have in the district to move all the Dickey students to in the event that the transformer fails is Mill Hall Elementary, would house K-1-2 of Dickey students in an emergency situation, and the remainder of the students, 3, 4, 5, would come here to the middle school. We would repurpose the back 6th grade hallway and make that just an elementary hallway. And again, that's a temporary emergency situation and emergency plan. As that plan began to emerge, that we have space in our district, how are we most effectively using the buildings we have? And the members of the facility committee and the board have to decide, are we going to invest $250,000 into fixing the transformer? If we can fit students into other buildings, then what would that look like? So that led to this slide where the facility committee's been grappling with this sense of urgency about what to do. They set us forth, me and my administrative team, and said, look, we'd like you to explore other options that do not include renovation or new construction. And is it possible to have any options that do not include additional costs, such as modular classrooms and et cetera, et cetera? So that is when our team set to work to find alternate options to what Crabtree Rohrbal presented. And then I'm going to ask Mrs. Taranto to come forward. Mrs. Taranto, as many of you know, is the principal at Robb Elementary.
Why is Renova not on any of that?
Because they're not declining in enrollment as quickly as the Southern Tier and the distance for busing. So we were looking at Southern Tier options, and if you'll notice that was also in the Crabtree, other than the option that Crabtree presented, which was close all elementaries and bus kids to one general location, but that was the rationale. Thanks for asking.
Good evening. As she said, my name is Mrs. T, and I'm the principal of Robb. One of the things that I think is kind of ironic, before I was the principal of Robb, I was the principal of Dickey and Sugar Valley. So I have a little bit of an idea of the clientele of Robb, the clientele of Dickey. But I want to just say to you, I want to point out that the options that we are looking at is without any construction. What are we doing without any construction? And the first thing that we were charged with is, all right, can we bring all of Dickey Elementary down into Robb? And one thing I do know, spending 15 years at Robb Elementary, unfortunately, as much as I would love to bring all of Dickey down and bring them back with me, there's just not enough room at Robb to house kindergarten through 5th grade. So then that means we needed to look at some alternate plans. First plan is option A, and that's that limited capacity at Robb. We could relocate Porter Township students from Robb to Mill Hall, and that would be K through 5. That would be approximately 51 students. And we could relocate the Dickey students to Robb, K through 5, approximately 234. Even by moving those Porter Township students out and all of Dickey in, there's just not enough capacity to give the best education possible to both Dickey and Robb. Option B, with special consideration for 5-6. Relocate K4 Porter Township students from Robb to Mill Hall, K to 4. Relocate K to 4 Dickey students down to Robb. A new configuration of Central Mountain Middle School to a 5-8 grade model, making it a school within a school in which 5-6 homerooms would have a designated location in the building and operate in an elementary model, and buses would transport K to 6 students and then 7 through 12 students separately. Those were things that we really had to think about. Of course, busing, putting 5th graders on buses with high schools. So that was one of our thoughts. Option 2, limited capacity at Robb and bus students away from their home schools would be to redraw district boundary lines for Mill Hall, Liberty Curtin, Woodward, and Robb to redistribute students to the 4 southern tier elementary schools. So those were the options that we came up with the thought process of not having to do any type of reconstruction. Going back, when you look at all 1A, 1B, 1-2, option 2, we'll go back to relocating K through 4 Porter from Robb to Mill Hall, relocating K through 4 Dickey students to Robb, new configuration of Central Mountain Middle School to a 5-8 grade model. Again, without new construction.
The additional costs, we've got brother and sister live in the same house. Bus 1 comes up, picks sister because she's a 3rd grader. Bus 2 comes and picks up brother because he's a 7th grader. What is the cost for now additional busing and time for students with that extra travel?
So you currently have 2-tiered busing system now. So there's already a K-5 bus run and a 6-12 bus run. So this would keep, if you think about your current K-5 students in the southern tier, they would stay primarily similar bus runs. I'm not going to promise you they're the exact same because we have students move in and out. We have to run efficient runs, and then the new kindergartners would come into that bus run in general, and then from there. Once those elementary school students are dropped off, the 5-6 students would continue to the middle school. And some, if I could just add to that, because there's some concern, I've talked to a lot of parents already, there is some concern that now a long bus ride is going to get even longer for 5th graders. That's why I'm saying I don't like students being on a bus for an hour. We have some unique challenges at Keystone Central. Whether you're aware of it or not, we are the largest, geographically, the largest district in the Commonwealth. We cover 980 square miles, more than any other district in the Commonwealth. It creates challenges. And when you look at how many remote rural areas we have, it's difficult to keep those bus runs as short as possible. So we want to look at, do we reroute buses so that the runs aren't as long with not so many stops? As far as the exact cost, we do not have that calculated. We do know that we've worked with Susquehanna Trailways to say, is it possible for you to change the tiered busing from K-5 to K-6? And the answer is yes. Okay, we're going to keep moving through this presentation, then we'll give people some time later for to come up and talk with us about questions, but I want to continue to move through the presentation. I think a lot of your questions might be answered through this avenue. I can do that.
So, even with with the slide I just showed you, what are some challenges that we still have to consider? The adjustment of Dickey students and Porter Township students into new schools. Certainly something we need to consider. Certainly something I know I, as an administrator, looking at Rob, really trying to determine what is in the best interest of those students coming from Dickey, merging with Rob Elementary, and we become one larger family. Special education. One thing Rob houses is many special education classes. We would have to consider sending a special education class and relocate it to Mill Hall. The elementary ESL program, which is housed at Rob, would end up going to Mill Hall. Displacement of staff, especially for our Dickey students and our Rob students. You're used to your teachers. You love your teachers. You want your teachers with your kids. So that's certainly something that we needed to be aware of. Relocation of the Head Start. Rob has a Head Start program. So we would have to relocate that Head Start program. And that will be determined in the future where that would go. And then, of course, Rob Cafeteria. I will say, whoever the engineer, for anybody, has anybody here ever been in Rob? Whoever the engineer was at Rob, they really had the foresight. It is a beautiful school. It's a beautiful school. It has a multi-purpose room on the lower level. It has a nice, very large cafeteria, nice sized classes. They did a great job with that. But even that, I'm really working through my way in how would we serve lunches to all of those students, along with Sharon Berger, our food director. There is limited capacity for lunches. So it would mean some longer lunch periods or a rolling lunch, which means maybe some of the students would come in at 11, some more would come in at 11:15. Then that way we don't have students sitting and just waiting on long time lunches. So we would have to work through that through a rolling lunch schedule. And those were some of the challenges that we're still looking at and considering and working our way through. Is there anything else from the team that I didn't, anything we need to add?
Our list of obstacles was huge.
Yes, our list was huge and we've been able to work our way, and truthfully I feel like we've worked our way down through. We're still working a little bit on the cafeteria, making sure that those, I don't want your child eating at 10 o'clock in the morning. So we're looking at maybe around 11:15, 11 o'clock, and then working their way through. Okay? All right.
So as Robin said, when we first started this, I have to tell you that when we said, oh my gosh, there's space at the middle school, our parents are they're going to grab their hearts and they're going to say, my fifth grader to the middle school. We have not overlooked that. We know that's a concern. And so over the last, I want to say 4 weeks, we have been looking at how do we alleviate those concerns? How do we recommend a model that is still academically supportive of 5th and 6th graders, academically supportive of their their social and emotional learning, and what is developmentally appropriate for children. And so we started brainstorming. One of the obstacles, I think at the beginning we actually called them grenades, but then we thought that wasn't a school appropriate term, so we turned it to obstacles. So we started chipping away on a marker board on what that obstacle list was. We included teachers in our meeting with our elementary and middle school administrators, and we started working through it. One of the things that I will have to tell you, full disclosure, my administrative team will tell you, how panicked was I when we started talking about this. Okay, so first of all, nobody likes to close a school. That's horrible. I student taught at Dickey 30 years ago. The building looks identical. Nobody wants to close schools, but if that is what has to happen and that's what the board decides to do, then we better have a really good plan to take care of our kids. And so for the last 3 weeks, that's what we've been working on. And I will tell you, it was the administrative team, after talking to them and really laying it out on the table, I said, look, can we do this or can we not do this? And part of the issue is part of my sway in my attitude was the fact that they reassured me that we can do this. I think Mr. Peters says, we can do this, boss. And if I would like to also point out, here's another reason why we can do this effectively if this is the way the board chooses to go. Mr. Peters and Katrina Lee, if you'd stand up. So Mr. Peters is the current principal of the Central Mountain Middle School. Mr. Peters has been an elementary principal and an elementary teacher. Most of his career has been spent in elementary. If you haven't met Katrina Lee is the new assistant principal here at the middle school. She has been a 6th grade teacher. She has had some experience in 5th grade as well, and this is her first year as an administrator. So I do believe that having administrators in a 5-8 building that truly have elementary experience makes me more assured that we're not just putting kids into a middle school and treating them like middle schoolers. I feel much more assured that we're going to have a 5-6 school within a school model. And so what we want to do now is kind of work you through those things that we've identified as obstacles and have looked at what will that look like if we were to go with that option. So Mr. Peters is going to walk you through those slides.
I'm sure going to try to. I don't know if I can multitask that well. So I guess before I get into the slides too far, I would say to you, and following up what Ms. Martin has said to you, I was the principal at Dickey Elementary just a few years ago. And I see some of the same faces in this room because in my first opportunity as administrator, we also looked at closing Dickey Elementary at that time. And so some of you stood with me in our frustrations and our concerns. And if I were to say to you, one of the things that I heard and tried to think back to in this process was I didn't feel like there was a plan. I didn't feel like we were able to communicate to families what our intentions were. And so on that, and I struggled. And I struggled even as an administrator because I wanted to be thoughtful with our parents, to be supportive, but also to understand there are larger issues out there. And I think we understood that there were some issues with our building at the time. It's been several years. We understand that that building is not ADA compliant, and so that we have some obligations there. The transformer issue has been a new one, and so it's added some additional concern. So I do empathize with you. I do understand those things. And so to the other families, as I try to be thoughtful to them and look at the idea, I know each year as we are here at the middle school, 5th grade parents are concerned about their 6th graders coming here. And so certainly when we open that conversation to 4th grade students coming to 5th grade, that concern is legit. We get it. But I can also tell you that often those same conversations, as we go through the course of the school year, change. Once students have had the opportunity to get through their own nerves and the adjustments and to get familiar with the building, because it's a big building, there's lots of change, and we understand that. To become familiar with teachers, with our routines and our procedures. Often those conversations of concern come back to parent-teacher conferences where we're saying, it was the parent. It was the parent that was overly concerned and not as much the student. We're okay now. And so that doesn't hold true for every student in every situation, but we understand that's a natural feeling. When you're making change and change to a larger school, lots of more kids, we get it. And so to be respectful to all of you, and we've been really trying to be thoughtful in our preparation and looking at our building, what we can do to best serve students. And so as we go through some of these slides, we did a similar presentation yesterday, and I said, I'm not great for reading from the slides, and I try not to do that, so please forgive me if I skip over anything, and if I do, don't hesitate to let me know if you have a question on anything. So the first part, when we talk about 4th and 5th grade students, into 5th and 6th grade and the grouping. So currently we do this. When our 5th grade students are coming in here, we meet with our counselors, we do shadow days, we meet with the teachers from the elementary buildings, we take their recommendations, we We look at their assessment data. So we try to be really thoughtful in how we put our classes together. When we do this at 4th grade into 5th grade, we would do the exact same things. We would look at the placing. We try to do a combination of students from each elementary school in every classroom. So there are some familiar faces. We do not tend to do whole classrooms from one particular building because we do begin to get students familiarized with other students in our building, to develop new relationships and friendships. It is a part of our process. And so that part is something that we are familiar with. We would use a similar strategy as we move potentially 4th grade into 5th grade. We talk about a workshop model as compared to block scheduling. So throughout the course of this year, we've been having conversations at the middle school in preparation for block scheduling. And our schedule tentatively for 7th and 8th graders would look like 4 blocks per day. Students would have 3 primary blocks of time where they would have 84-minute periods, and then they would have 1 period that is their itinerants and is a split block, so they potentially could have up to 2 electives or itinerants in a day. So when you think about that for 5 and 6, they would follow a very similar model. And if you are not aware, currently in the elementary, they do 90-minute blocks for ELA and 90-minute for math. So you really aren't adjusting too much for the students. It's very similar to the model they already follow. What we would do then for their itinerants is currently, based on our staffing, we're able to provide the exact same itinerant experience that they currently receive at the elementary level, plus some additional opportunities. So right now, they would have multiple phys ed periods, art, music, library. They would have an opportunity for STEM, which has been new this year. We would continue to have that. And we also would add what we call social emotional learning, which runs with a program we call Second Step, which would be implemented through our health and phys ed department. And so the other part of that time in their half of their block, so all teachers in the 5th grade and 6th grade would have a common planning time. All 5th grade teachers would have a common planning time, and then all 6th grade teachers would have a common planning time. On the second half of that block, what would happen is there would be some flexibility for additional opportunities. So students in 5th grade would have an opportunity to join band, chorus, orchestra. There would be opportunities for recess, as I know that has come up as a concern for some. And I would trust my teachers to work with students to develop opportunities to give them the chance to go out. It might not be a recess every day. It could be, if it's a 42-minute period, they may use part of it. But I would trust my staff to be able to work that out and still provide students with those opportunities. So we want to be open-minded, we want to be flexible, we want to be able to have those conversations. Within our building and our structure, one of the things that we have done and has been referenced, we would locate 5th and 6th grade students in the back part or the back hallway of our building. It's currently, I don't want to get it wrong, I think it's the 300 hallway. I get confused on those sometimes. So we would align 3 teams of 3. So there would be 9 5th grade teachers. In a team of 3, there would be an English or an ELA teacher, there would be a math teacher, and there would be a teacher responsible for science and social studies. And so whatever team your student might be in, they would rotate between those 3 teachers. So they would have those common 3 teachers throughout the day. The other part of their classroom setup would be those 3 rooms would basically be side by side or across the hall. So the transition piece would be really very limited. Other times of the day where students might need to transition for us, and this was, again, as Mrs. Taranto had referenced, lunch. So currently we run 3 lunch periods, 1 for 6, 1 for 7, 1 for 8. We would look at creating a staggered lunch. And so what we would do is begin to bring our 5th graders down first. I've already talked with Mr. Pacella. We understand we would need to change some of the things in our current cafeteria setup. One of our advantages is we do have multiple serving lines, and so we can get students through much quicker. We would also extend our seating for our cafeteria. Currently we have about 12 round tables. We'll change the type of table in there to accommodate more students, as well as we are currently in the process of making some changes in our library. Our library is right outside our cafeteria, so we will extend our section to be able to eat. We'll change our floors, we'll do some different things. It actually has a glass window between the cafeteria and that section of the library. But one of the things that we have done is I've had the opportunity to go to multiple schools this year and see some of the more creative ways that not everybody has to be in the cafeteria at the same time. And as I referenced that, the area right outside this room in our auditorium was going to become the Wildcat Bistro here in a few short weeks. And so our food services manager or director, Sharon Berger, has worked with us throughout the year. We serve breakfast out there every morning from a cart. We now will have a full-time food service station, as well as tables and additional seating where students can come in here in the morning, and it'll be more of a restaurant atmosphere for them. We look to be able to, at some point, extend that to lunchtime also. So, and part of our plan on our school-wide positive behavior, we will have students be able to purchase a ticket or an entrance fee to come down and have their lunch down here outside of the auditorium. So just looking to give kids some freedom, but also to structure it and recognize what they're doing with their behavior. So we have multiple options in mind of ways we would like to support them that way. From an academic standpoint, when you look at the materials that currently are structured for 5th grade students, those materials would all follow here to the middle school. Busing as reference, and I think this is a huge one as a person who deals with bus behavior, and I would say to you that we are aware of the concerns that go on with buses as far as the communication with putting additional students on buses to the middle school. So I think this idea is one that really benefits students, particularly our current 6th graders. When you look at this as an opportunity, our 7th and 8th grade students would basically run the same bus runs that they run now, which would actually be our 6th and 7th next year. They begin dropping off around 7:30 here. That would allow for the flow of those students to come into the building, and then all elementary buses would drop off and then bring the remaining 4th and 5th graders to here. So they'll only finish out their run coming to here. They will come in at a later time, 10 to 15 minutes later, and be an opportunity for them to come into the building without the congestion, to also be dropped off near our cafeteria outside of our gym lobby, and then their transition down the hallway. There's only one classroom in that hallway, so again, their interaction with the 7th and 8th grade students would be limited at that time. Say it again, boss. I'm just holding it.
Thought I was going to do it.
See what happens when you let me push the button? I got all kinds of buttons. Perfect. So, other additional opportunities that come with the potential of our 5th grade students being in here is we currently run a club schedule weekly, and so we would continue to do so and include the 5th grade students in that opportunity. So these are just a few of the examples. We probably have 30 to 40 clubs. With the additional teachers that would come into the building, we would be able to implement more clubs. And so this, again, would be a new opportunity accessible to the 5th grade students. As referenced, as far as 5th grade band, orchestra, chorus, those things would all be accessible to our students. What also would potentially be able to happen, currently 5th graders in the elementary school are able to get band instruction. That instruction would now be available to the 4th grade students and allow them to get some of that music instruction sooner. For the Dickey Elementary students, there are a few buses that run for Dickey, but currently most of that area is zoned for them not to get transportation. If you're aware, Susquehanna Transit does donate some busing to us to provide that. At this point, all students that attend Dickey Elementary would get transportation. Currently, our Title I funding is K to 5. We would look to allocate that K to 4. And then from a district level, all title funding that is not Title I would be accessible K to 12. One of the key things, and certainly want to make sure that I take time to make sure that you're aware of this, when we look through this model, currently what it would be projected based on our current enrollment numbers for our 5th and 6th grade would be classrooms of approximately 27. So 9 classrooms of approximately 27. That is comparable with some of the class sizes that are currently out there. But when we look at the resources here at the middle school, we have Read 180. We also have a variety of special education classrooms that we can utilize. And so as students go where they may need the best services, what we're able to do is bring the larger scale classroom numbers down from 27, hopefully under 25, potentially in the low 20s in some situations. And so again, I think that's to the benefits of the students in this building. It would do the same for classrooms at Robb Elementary to be able to reallocate staffing, adding additional classrooms, and again, a goal of having classrooms that would be better balanced across the district. I got it this time, boss. So another feature here at the middle school, and certainly something that I would welcome, we have a PTSO here, Parent Teacher Student Organization. And so it is something that we are trying to be thoughtful. We haven't had a lot of conversation at this point in what this would look like, because at this point, these are all tentative plans. We understand that. We're just trying to be prepared and be thoughtful. So if this were the decision of the board and we were to move forward, one of the things that we would like to be able to do is open up our PTSO to parents from other PTOs and schools to be able to come in, to be a part of our conversation, to help us plan for next school year. We do our election of officers later in the school year, and so I know currently 2 of my members that are officers are 8th grade parents that will be moving on. So we would appreciate the opportunity to have parents come in, to be interested in our PTSO organization and to support and join those things. Other plans for us, we would plan for visitations in May. Currently we do shadow experience for 5th to 6th grade. We'll continue to do that. We cannot provide a shadow experience for 4th to 5th grade because we currently don't have any 5th grade classrooms. So there's nothing to show them. There's no teachers in those rooms that we could do. What our plan would be to remedy that is, as we set up for the new school year, we would provide an opportunity for families to come in, an orientation night, an opportunity to tour the building and see the classrooms. And so trying to allow students to alleviate some of those potential concerns as well as parents. We would then, next year, if we were to move to 5th grade here, one of the things that we would also do is we would then extend that 4th to 5th grade. That would become the shadow day. So we would continue the opportunity. We would just transition it from 4th to 5th grade in the future. Team, anything I missed? Oh, thank you. So currently we recognize that most of the elementary schools do 5th grade promotion. And certainly at this point, 4th grade promotions have not necessarily been planned for. I did have one PTO organization try to be prepared, and so they reached out to us in the past week. They looked at potential dates if they wanted to have a 4th grade or needed to have a 4th grade promotion. We've already worked with them to secure this facility so that it was prepared for. If it turns out that doesn't need to occur, it is what it is, and we can cancel that, but it is an opportunity for those that know that it may happen. We want to work with you to support that transition.
I'm
Yes.
concerned, as it is now, we're going to have one in elementary school, maybe one here. It's hard enough to get PTO members, period, and I'm going to be doing 2 separate PTOs.
And so I recognize that, having been an elementary principal, I know what sometimes our attendance at PTO was. I would tell you, if I'm honest here, we don't have high numbers, and so I recognize for parents. But the reality is, with students at multiple grade levels, that potentially does happen. We would certainly be thoughtful, and when we're scheduling, we might be able to work with other PTOs and say, is there a common night? I'm more than happy at times to allow multiple organizations to meet in this building. And so and I know often you want to be in your own school, in your own building, but if it helps people to have multiple PTOs come here so that we could have individual meetings and then potentially more of a district-wide PTO meeting, certainly things that we would be open to the conversation about. What else I got? Perfect. Oh, I feel like I've been up here forever. Check in, check out. And so at 5th and 6th grade, what we would potentially look at would be homeroom, but we would look more of a check-in, check-out. One of the things we currently do with some of our students is we do student mentors as well as teacher mentors. And so what we would try to do is the homeroom time in the morning for 5th and 6th grade would only be about 10 minutes. In some cases, that would be also time as they're transitioning in with their breakfast, things like that. But there would be an opportunity at the end of the day and another 10 minutes at the end of the day where they could go back. We can help them with their planners. We can try to help them be organized. We do understand that transition process sometimes is difficult, and so it would be something we'd be thoughtful of as we try to go to the change. One of the other things that I don't think was included in any slides was that we would look to start and end the 5th grade day a little bit differently. Obviously, we mentioned that they would come in later on those buses. We would look to begin to dismiss 5th and 6th graders earlier. So we would have a dismissal for 5th and 6th grade as well as for 7th and 8th grade. The rationale for that would be we would be able to get those 5th and 6th graders on a bus. Obviously, we're running K-6 buses now. They would be able to be picked up, and then they would go to the elementary schools to pick up the remaining elementary students. We're working out the times and all the logistics of that, but it certainly seems like something that we can make happen. So our Central Mountain Middle School student ambassadors, we actually have multiple programs here. Our ambassadors are ones who will help to show our building off to others, to make people feel welcome, to share the good things that are going on at Central Mountain Middle School. We are fortunate enough to actually have multiple student organizations that do that. We currently have our Renaissance leaders. We have a school-wide positive behavior team, our student team, as well as we have a student council. So those would all be opportunities available to the students that attend Central Mountain Middle School. Our school-wide positive behavior is something we're very proud of. We've gone to what is called PBIS Rewards this year, and it is an electronic system. All of our students get an ID badge. They can earn their points. Their points are on their card. They can, if you notice the Revolution rack outside this door, they can purchase items within the student store, as well as other items for our school-wide positive behavior events. And then I did reference recess earlier, and I'll turn the microphone over to the boss.
So the last part of this transition plan, I know this is different than the last time that Dickie was looked at for a closure, was there would be furloughs of staff members. But in this model, the way that we would be moving students around and keeping class sizes lower, we would not be furloughing teachers, we would be reassigning and repurposing. When I think about our staff in the area, you're aware, I think most of you are aware, there was like a huge furloughing time a couple of years ago, which really stretched us thin on some really key positions. We're not going to cut any counselors. We're not going to cut nurses. We're not going to cut those positions because we need to reassign them to make sure we're providing the adequate support. So those things are also key in this plan and in this model. And again, I want you to understand that we've put a lot of time and thought into the whole child and understanding your perspective as a parent. We know it's not a perfect plan. There are still things that we need to work out. But most importantly, we need you to help us with that. We need you to help us identify the things we haven't already discovered or have thought about. And your voice matters. We did this exact same slideshow for all faculty and staff last evening or after school, and we still done the same thing. So your avenue to provide that voice and that feedback would be to talk to your current building principals. They're collecting that information from stakeholders. The other people that you can talk to would be all of our Keystone Central board members. I know there are at least 7 of them here tonight. My email address is on here as well. My administrative team and I are going to stay here up front. If somebody wants to come down and talk with us and ask us some questions and provide more feedback or some things you want us to consider, come and talk to us this evening face to face, or you can reach us via email. Plus, I think you already know how to get in touch with your child's principal. So that really is the end of our presentation session, and I want to thank you for coming out and being involved in tonight's meeting. So thank you. Have a great night.